And welcome back. Okay, in this next video here, we're going to do some very similar things to what we did last time, but this time, instead of for a timer, this one is going to be for recording and tracking the score. We're going to, again, create a script that's going to have a static variable so that we can actually get the score out of the script to somewhere else. We're going to have one of our empty game objects to house it in, to be in the game. And then we're going to have a number of internal variables and little bits of logic to figure out what the score is at any given time during an update function. So before we do that, we have to think about what kind of elements we might like to include in the score. And the most obvious of these is to give the user some points for hitting a target. So, you can come up with a point total. It's kind of arbitrary, whatever you want, 50 points, 100 points, 1,000,000 points, just some sort of value. But we don't want that to be the only thing that creates points. If you did, we've got 12 targets times whatever you do. They go around, they hit all 12 targets, 12 times that's their score. Always get the same score as a top score. We want to include some additional elements to where one player could do better against another or do better against a previous time they did the game, even with this limited amount of gameplay. In future games, maybe you have more levels, more challenge, all kinds of things, but for now, we just have what we have, but we can still come up with some ways to make it that it's almost impossible to come up with a perfect score. You can always do a little better. So a couple of the other elements that we can add into the point scoring equation that are readily available are the count of the ammo used and the amount of elapsed time that we just did in the last video. Well, when you hit a target, you get some points. When you use some ammo, you lose some points. So the best you could do for hitting all 12 targets is to use 12 shots, 12 of your projectiles. You can also lose some points for how much time it takes to go around and hit the targets. This is one where taking the time to move up close to the targets, well, that means you're more likely to hit it, so less ammo, but more time to move there. So it gives you a trade-off kind of thing. So just extra challenge, extra things that you can have as elements in the game, even at this level. Now, when we do this, we've got our count of targets hit, of ammo fired, of elapsed time, which is usually measured in seconds, but, we may or may not like the values that we initially create. So we're going to set up variables as external multipliers for each of those. So if hitting a target was, say, worth 100 points, the multiplier for the target would be 100. If a projectile being fired cost the user, 5 points, then the multiplier for that would be 5. If it's 1 point, then it's 1. And just because it's 1 doesn't mean you shouldn't have a multiplier, because you may initially want it to be 1, but later on you might say, oh, well, I'd like to change that. Well, if you don't have that multiplier in place as an external variable, that's going to make it much harder to do. So even if you're planning on some item just being worth 1, still put that multiplier there. It'll help you out later on. So here we go. So the first thing we're going to do is come up to the Game Object menu and create an empty game object. And this one we're going to name Current Score. And now we need a script, so the Create menu here, JavaScript, and we're going to name this one also Current Score. You don't have to name these things the same, but keeps them from getting lost. And so we'll find it. There it is. There's our update function, and we, as we said, we're going to start with a static variable. So static, and we're going to call this one int current score. to keep our naming convention intact that we've been using for these static variables. And this one's an int, of course. And now we've got a few more variables here. We've got the int target multiplier that we talked about. And this is an int, obviously. And here's where we're going to give it an initial value. I'm just going to put in 100 for now. So now let's fast forward. And there we are. Okay, we've got our 3 multipliers here. We've got our target multiplier that we did before the fast forward of 100. We've got our ammo multiplier, which we set at 1, which technically that means you really wouldn't need it because we're going to be multiplying the number of projectiles fired by 1, and anything multiplied by 1, well, we're not going to change it that much. But we may decide we don't like 1 and want to change to a different amount of impact on the score for each projectile being fired. So having it there is what we want. We've also got this int seconds multiplier, and that's set at 0.1. What that's going to do is result in 1 point for each 10 seconds, or 1/10 of a point per second, but we're measuring these points in even whole numbers. So that's our static variable for communicating with the outside world. Then we've got our 3 external variable multipliers, which just basically say what each thing is worth in terms of points. The targets are going to add points. The ammo shot and seconds that have elapsed are both going to remove points. So it makes it a little more challenging from the game than just hit the target and get some points. So now down into the update method, we've got our first variable here, this int ammo fired, which is an integer. We're setting this equal to 200 because 200 is the total number of projectiles. This is actually a bit of a shortcut. It's kind of frowned upon in the coding world, but just to get her done, as it were, right now, we're just going to hard code in this 200 number. Ideally, you'd like to create some sort of variable so that if you change the number of projectiles that the user had, it would just update automatically. That's a little more complicated. We're not going to do that kind of thing at this level. We're just putting in the 200. So it's 200 minus ammo remaining dot int ammo remaining. So however many have been fired, we'll reduce that ammo remaining, which is originally 200 in that other process, to something less. You shot 10. The ammo remaining variable will be 190. So 200 minus 190, the int ammo fired here will be a value of 10. Targets work the same way, except we have a total of 12 targets. So if you have 10 remaining, then 12 minus 10 means you've hit 2. So int targets hit will be 2. Same kind of thing goes on with the time, goes into that int et variable there. Then we create our int current score, which is the int targets hit times our target multiplier, how many points per target, minus int ammo fired times int ammo multiplier, minus int et times int seconds multiplier. Put all that together, that gives us our score, and then below that we've got our little test line which prints out our int current score. Now, I've done something a little extra here. I've combined that, what's called concatenated that together with an empty string. And that's the opening and closing quotes at the start. This is kind of a shortcut hack to turn an integer into a string, or make sure that an integer is turned into a string so that it can be printed. Just a little trick, a little shortcut. Sometimes the system's fine with this on its own, and you don't really need it, but it's just to make sure that there's going to be no problems printing out this number. So there it is. That's what we've got. And it all looks right. Got all our semicolons at the ends of the lines, so we're going to save it. And we can then close the script editor. And now we need to take the script, the current score script, and move it over to connect it to the current score object in the hierarchy window. So just select it, drag it there to the right thing, click the Run button, and let's see. Okay, there we are. Got some point scoring, firing projectiles, points are going down, hit another target. So it all looks right. We can keep going here for another little while. Sometimes problems don't show up right away. Okay, it's looking good, so we can stop. All right, so now we've got the points, we've got our timer. We just need to put this all together and get it on the screen.